Big breath, big breath.
Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Anne-Marie McEwen here on this Sunday, January the 20th, 2019. It's 8 p.m. in New York and 5 p.m. in Los Angeles. It is, let's see, what time is it? 1 a.m. in London. If you're listening from London, thank you very much for being live at this hour. And in Sydney, Australia, it's 12 noon. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for yet another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And we're happy to get this week off and running with this relaxed Sunday evening program. We are here in New England, where both Anne-Marie and I are located. It's in America, it's a big night for American football fans, which of course is different from the kind of football played around the world. But the New England Patriots are playing to get into the Super Bowl, so most New Englanders are glued to their televisions, including Mike McEwen tonight. But not us. We are here to talk about the law of attraction and deliberate creation and all of the things that are just happy about life and good about life, because that's how we become successful deliberate creators, right, Anne-Marie? I mean, that's the whole secret, isn't it, right there?
That's right. Just be happy and let it all flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I hope you've been having a happy week. You told me you were listening to one of our episodes from last Monday, I think it was, when Louis and Yvonne, his friend Yvonne, came on to tell us about her story of having had a stroke at, I think, what was she, 22, 24, something like that? She was really young when she had that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how she has survived it and thrived afterward, which is always a good feeling thing. It's reassuring that you can go through a bad medical situation and really come out well at the end on the other side by focusing your mind on what you want, you know?
Very inspiring. Yes.
Very inspiring. Yeah.
Although a little bit scary, because I was thinking to myself, gee, I wonder what you have to do to prevent a stroke. And then I said, well, I'm just going to be happy and think myself healthy and not even focus on it. So,
Right? Yeah. Well, that is the secret, really, when you come down to it, just focusing on the stuff that you want.
yeah.
I've been noticing it a lot lately, just in communications between Louise and I on mundane things, average everyday things, you know, little things that pop up in conversation that remind me, just there's another opportunity. There's another chance that we had that we focused on the negative. Boy, we could have focused on the positive there. Why didn't we just do that? Just shift the brain over, you know, just change the pattern. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we succeed in doing that. But I've become really aware lately of how there are still more opportunities to take advantage of to get into that, you know, flipping the mind over to that positive side.
Sure.
And knowing that when we do that, things work out for the better. That's been what the experience is.
Yep. Not always easy to do, but as my mother used to say, easier said than done.
Yes, that's true. But on the other hand, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it already. So that's why we have a podcast to talk about it.
There you go. That's
So
right.
let's see.
We heard a quote this morning. It said, live or learn. Yeah, it was live or learn. So I was like,
Okay.
I think that's what it was. No, maybe it wasn't live or learn. Live or let live. No, I'll have to ask him now. But I was just like something or learn. I was like, yeah, that's what happens, you know.
It almost sounds like the Wayne Dyer quote, Dr. Wayne Dyer, who was quoted as saying, "If I believe it, I will see it," which
Yeah,
reverses the traditional
right,
saying, right?
right. That's right.
But
But
it's true.
Honey, what was that quote this morning? Something like live and learn, or
He's probably engrossed in the game.
oh, that's right. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Oh,
Sometimes you win, sometimes you
okay.
learn.
Yes, this is also true.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was like, yep, that's true. Hopefully all the time we're learning, but you know, winning,
Well,
I
yeah.
think when you're winning, you're just enjoying the joy of winning. You know, you're not thinking about what you're learning from it. You might have learned something from that experience, but you don't realize it until later on. But in the moment when you're winning something, there's just exuberance, there's just joy, and that's you know that's the goal, isn't it? The exuberance and joy, that's the goal of it all. So
It is the
that's the
goal.
you know that's winning. So
And it is an opportunity to learn, actually, now that I think about it, because the easiest time to get into a good feeling place is when you're already in a good feeling place. So that's the
Yeah.
best opportunity to get that spiral going, right? To get that positive vortex going. Just keep playing the good feeling, because it's a whole lot easier when you're already there. And yet, how often do we forget to do that? How often, when we finally get into a good feeling place, we're just enjoying the good feeling place, and we forget, oh yeah, we should keep milking this. We should keep putting out there more reasons, more things to think and feel good about, more reasons more things to focus on, more wishes to draw in, and all this kind of stuff. And most often, it's like, oh, I finally made it to feel good. Thank goodness.
Yep.
It's a
Yep.
funny thing. The other thing I talked about a little bit this week with, can't remember which co-host it was, but we were talking about the positive end of the spectrum when it comes to like Abraham. When Abraham has their list of 22 different emotional states for the emotional guidance
Mhm.
system, and
Mhm.
when you look at that scale, the first thing is the scale is amazing because it only has like 7 positive things on the scale, and it has like 14 negative points, which seems rather imbalanced to me.
I
But
know. I was struck by that too when I first
yeah,
saw it. I was like, really? Wow. But it kind of makes sense too because we're on Earth after all. I mean, they do call this the planet of insanity. So,
who calls
it's
it that? I haven't heard that one. I like it, but who said that?
I read a book by Sylvia Brown and in
Ah,
it she in it I believe, now I say that, but um it might have even been Neil Donald Walsh. Sometimes I get my sources mixed up. I read different books. I read a lot of Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, and it might have been in there, or it might have been from Sylvia Brown. I forget which one, but people on the other side, people in other planets, wherever, they call this the planet of insanity because of all the contrast that's here. So
hmm. Okay. That's an interesting thing because what they're
yeah.
really saying is that contrast is insane.
Well, yeah, well, it's insane because we do all these things. We do all these horrible things to each other and to ourselves, and really that's insane, right? It's not sanity to do all these things. It's crazy, and
Well,
yet we learn
I'll
and
share a secret with you. I'll share a secret. I'll share it with our listeners too. And it's one that I have never, to the best of my knowledge, talked about on the podcast before. For the longest time, and I can't put a particular time frame to it except that it seems dating back to when I was a little kid. I have had, I'll call it a dream because I have no other way to describe it. I
hmm
think I've most often experienced it during sleep, so dream seems like a reasonable way to describe it.
hmm
But I also know that I've experienced it in kind of that waking state where you're half awake, half asleep.
yeah.
And in that dream state, I still have trouble even describing this. I think this is one of the reasons I've never really brought it up before. I have been of the opinion, I guess, or believing that I had conversations either before coming here or after coming here, but in dream state, with non physical beings, with me as a non physical being.
Uh-huh.
And in that dream state, in those conversations, I have been arguing that this world is insane.
Well, I don't think a lot of people would argue with you on that.
You'd
I
be
don't think
amazed,
they'll argue
actually.
hard.
In fact, I can't tell you exactly what I had in mind as an alternative because it's not a clear memory. But I have this strong feeling that I've been arguing that the approach that we collectively as physical and non-physical beings have taken, sort of like the team strategic approach, doesn't make sense. And that we're actually making things more difficult for each other for no other purpose than to increase the contrast, which seems kind of crazy to me because it's not like we lack contrast. It's not like we have to turn up the volume, there's plenty of it. And I can't tell you any more about it than that, but I have had that kind of quasi half clear, half vague dream thought as long as I can remember.
Wow.
Now, is it real? I don't know. It might be. I can't tell you. I just I just tell you that's what's been going on. I think that's one of the reasons I didn't talk about it too, is I didn't know what else to say about it
Right.
other than that.
Right. Well, maybe there's something in that. Maybe that's something that your subconscious knows or feels that you have this deep um, sense that we're doing things the hard way, and maybe we could be doing it a better way. And maybe this podcast is your way of helping the world try to find an easier way to live and manage their lives. So,
Maybe that's what it is. I mean, I don't really feel like I can claim to be that prescient, that fully well informed that I feel like I am qualified to teach the rest of the world how to live a better life because that just seems too presumptuous to me.
yeah, yeah.
And it actually goes against a lot of what I believe in. Like, I can't remember who I was talking about it with, but um, I know it was with Cindy Chavez. We were talking, I think, after a podcast about, no, actually during a podcast too, is one of the discussions we had about Neville Goddard. We were talking about how Neville says that there's no such thing as ascended masters. That in fact, ascension is really nothing more than reaching a what some people would call a higher level of consciousness, but which I and I think Neville also would call a more deliberate level of consciousness, where we are more deliberately making decisions about what it is we're focusing on.
Hmm.
And that he makes a really interesting point that it really does not make sense to refer to anyone as a master.
Yeah.
Because the moment that you refer to somebody as a master, you have simultaneously inferred that, especially if they're your master, you have simultaneously inferred that you're their slave. And that's problematic.
Well, it depends on your definition of master. I mean, you can certainly, I think a lot of the context of master is that they have mastered a certain subject or an area of expertise. That doesn't necessarily make anybody their slave, in that context. So I wouldn't jump to the assumption that by calling somebody else a master of something, it implies that you are the slave. But where I have heard contention over the word master is that, like, who are you to say that you've really reached such a high level of understanding that you have now mastered it? Like, there's no more to learn from it. There's no more to learn in that area. Like, isn't there always more to learn? So that's where I kind of struggle with that word and the usage of that word. But I would argue with you on the slave bit.
All
That
right,
would
well, then let's have a little fun with that because I think I would argue too. And the argument that I would make is that the slave reference there is a little bit metaphorical, but I think it's an accurate one. Most people, when we think of master and slave, we think of true slavery, where somebody is sold into slavery. They're somebody else's property. They have no rights. They're whipped if they don't pick the cotton, all that kind of stuff, right?
mhm.
But there are other forms of slavery. And for instance, if let's say we have we'll call him a guru instead of a master to make it a little bit more, I don't know, politically correct or something. All right, so we have a guru, right? And then we have the followers of the guru, okay? And the guru is preaching all this stuff. Here's what I've discovered are the keys to life, and here's what really works, and all this kind of stuff. And the followers are lapping up everything that the guru is saying. He says, yes, yes, guru, I'm following you completely. I'm with you. And they're, I want to teach me more. Teach me more. I want to learn more of this stuff. What else do you do that makes you such a great guru? And in the process of doing that, they do something very interesting. They give up a small amount of their own creativity because they're depending upon the creativity of the guru to guide them. And so I would argue in that sense that is a form of slavery. They are enslaving themselves to whatever the guru says is the thing to do. Whereas the true free person, to coin a phrase, is the one who says, well, gurus are interesting, but screw that. I'm going to follow my own path, and because I think it's much more interesting if I find the way to get there. And if I keep learning my own way of doing it, well, then I guess in a sense I'm a guru, but I'm just the free person who's learning this stuff.
Okay. All right. So I I get what you're saying, and I can see where you would say they they lose a little bit of their own creativity and their own personal empowerment by listening so much to what the guru has to say and by following the guru in that sense. And so, in a way, they're enslaving themselves
Yeah,
by giving their power away to this
exactly.
other being. But I believe if that's the kind of situation you're talking about, a true master would not allow the people he's teaching, his students, to get lost like that, to give up so much of themselves. I think a true master, a pure master who was truly trying to help other people would not allow that to happen. But of course, there is a lot of imbalance in the world, and so probably see that, and probably
I'll
there are situations where you just like you described.
I'll point to Abraham Hicks, who I think is the best of all the law of attraction teachers out there. I
Mhm.
love Abraham Hicks. As Louis likes to say, Louis D'Souza likes to say, I have never heard anything come out of Abraham that doesn't resonate with me. It all resonates with me,
Uh-huh.
which is phenomenal as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And yet, even with Abraham Hicks, I have noticed a lot of people who basically just hang on Abraham's every word. And everything that Abraham says is gospel. And to me, that's insane. But nevertheless, I've seen that. I can point to a group on Facebook where if you have the temerity to go into the group and say something that is not pure Abraham in response to a question that's posted, you risk getting booted out of the group. Now,
Wow.
I'm sorry, that is a slave.
Wow.
That
Wow.
is a slave. That's a slave mentality right there. That's somebody who refuses to think for themselves. The only thoughts they dare put out are the ones that are in perfect resonance with what Abraham has taught.
Or maybe it's so highly disciplined that there's a perception of this is right and this is the way that question is answered, and they're so focused or disciplined on that train of thought that anything outside of that is, I guess you'd have to say the word wrong, if they're going to reject
Well,
even the
they do treat it as
questioner.
wrong. They do
Yeah.
treat it as wrong.
Yeah.
But I would say if you're going to talk about right and wrong, then they're the ones who are in the wrong because Abraham says nothing we teach has anything to do with right or wrong.
Right.
They're very clear
That's true.
about that.
That's
We're
true.
not here to give you any kind of guidance morally or whatever in terms of the kinds of choices you're making in your life. We're just here
Uh-huh.
to explain to you how the universe works. That's what Abraham tells us.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but these people treat Abraham's word as if it is the right word. And it's a
Yeah.
big sized group too. It's a very large group.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I
So
haven't I
this
haven't
is a
come
big
across
phenomenon.
that.
I've seen it in a lot of different ways. That
Hmm.
group is probably the biggest example of it. But I think it's really important to point out none of this stuff, I don't care which teachers we listen to, none of this stuff should supersede our own minds and our own connections with our inner being.
Absolutely.
Use, we should use it as guidance in terms of here's some guidance in terms of here's where you can go to get perhaps the answers you're looking for. But we got to process it. We got to think it. We got to feel it. We got to connect it. We got to say yes or no. That really does work for me, or no, it doesn't work for me, or whatever. But we're the
Right.
ones who have to make that decision. Otherwise, we do become the slaves. And I think that's
Right.
really so.
Well, I,
Anyway,
I think, yeah, finding it within ourselves and going within ourselves is absolutely, I feel, the best way to solve anything, really.
absolutely, absolutely, I agree with you. So, well, we
Mhm.
tried to stir up a little controversy there. We ended up agreeing anyway, but we tried our best. So this is a Q&A, and if anybody has any topics or questions they'd like us to address, we would be loving to do that. Actually, I see Sarita has something here. I just noticed it, so I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it over into my little um, my notepad feature because that way, when it scrolls along, I won't lose track of it. I have a tendency to do that. So anyway, what is being said here? All right, she says the lurker is here. Congratulations. We're glad that you're lurking, Sarita. She says I appreciate the nice advice on how to handle my daughter's situation last week. You're welcome. I listened to that episode this morning, and it was wonderful advice. She is doing well, by the way. Congratulations. That's
Nice.
fabulous. That's credit to your daughters, and it's also credit to you because you are approaching them in a positive way, and that positiveness is rubbing off. So that's a good thing. That's a great thing, right?
Very good.
Yeah. So not so much a question, but that's a victory. That's the other thing we got to do more of, isn't it? We got to
Yes,
celebrate the victories. There
that's
there isn't
right.
enough of that, right?
I know, and
Because
it's true. We don't celebrate the victories enough, and I sometimes think about, especially on Sundays, I think about, well, what victories have I had this week? And sometimes they're so little you don't even recognize them, and sometimes they're so uh, I don't know what's the word. Like they're not so obvious. They're subtle that you don't even think about them being part of the law of attraction or being because of the law of attraction. They just happen.
yep.
And yet a lot of it is uh, because of the law of attraction,
Well,
right?
all of it
Everything
is.
is.
Yeah,
So, right, right, right. So, do you have a particular win this week you'd like to talk about?
as you were saying that, I was being reminded of the fact that even the smallest ones are still victories. You know, if you achieve like a very, very small thing, and I had one this afternoon actually.
Hmm.
As you know, here in Connecticut, we just had a snowstorm, and it was followed with some ice, and so it's created some rather difficult circumstances. And Louise and I live in an apartment complex, so when there's a storm that comes like that, at some point when the storm ends, we all have to move our cars off into a side street so they can plow everything. And so that's part of what I was doing today. When I went out, we actually had to do it in two or three stages. There's a whole story that's involved there, but the bottom line is it didn't go as quickly as it often goes.
Uh-huh.
So the third time that I'm going out there, I'm going out to retrieve our cars and bring them back to the parking lot. And as I get out to the sidewalk right outside, our neighbor upstairs comes out of her door as well. And she's relatively new. She moved in just a couple months ago. She's new to the complex. And it's really the first opportunity the two of us have had a chance to talk. Louise has talked with her once or twice, but it was the first time that I had a chance to talk to her. Amy was her name. And so we're saying hello and introducing ourselves to each other. And she immediately goes off on the crew who is doing all the cleanup, our maintenance people, and how this is taking forever. She can't believe how long this is taking, and she can't believe how slow they are. And how about those cars over there that never even got moved? I thought they were supposed to get fined if they didn't get moved. We're supposed to get fined. What's going on? And she's just going on and on and on about this. And once I got a word in edgewise, I pointed out to her, well, there's a couple ways you can deal with this kind of thing. You can get all upset about stuff, or you can focus on what's going right and just stay on that and not worry about the other stuff, and you end up with a better experience here. And I could even point to somebody I knew who used to be a neighbor of ours who ultimately got evicted for reasons that are not necessarily related to this. But up to that point of the eviction and afterward, all he could do was think and say negative things about the people who were the maintenance people. And so his experience with them was negative. Well, I know those same people, and my experience with them is very positive.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because I take a more positive approach to it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I made that point. She actually got the point. She said that was really good. She appreciated that. Well, I went to get the cars, drove the first car up, and there's like a whole line of people trying to get to the same area where I'm parking, and they're all stopped. So I stop, and I wait some more, and nobody's moving. And I start to get a little frustrated, so I pull over a little bit and get out of my car and walk up to the front car and say, "Move forward so we can park." And she said, "Well, I would, except they're not done sanding over here." And I said, "Oh, great, okay." So left, went back to my car, and I'm muttering to myself, "Why can't they get the sanding done?" And then I remembered, wait a minute, Walt, you just gave Amy some wonderful advice. Why aren't you following your own advice? And once I
Yeah.
remembered that, I said, I'm right. I really should be following that advice. So I'm just going to go back to appreciating, the wonderful job these guys do. And yeah, okay, so it wasn't quite as quick today as it normally is. But you know what? Hey, I don't have to shovel the snow. They shovel the snow for me. I don't have to do
That's
most
right.
of the stuff. They take care of all that stuff.
That's right.
So that's what I did. And I actually parked quite a bit away from our house, but I found a place I could park and then went to get to the second car. And when I got up with the second car, everything had cleared out, so everything was fine anyway. So Is that a big victory? No, it's actually a fairly small victory, but it's an important one because I could have just gotten into that mode of, I can't believe that these people are just sitting there. They don't even, they could have just pulled in. There was place for them to pull in. Why didn't they have to? I could have gotten into that mode very easily, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the
But
only reason I didn't is
congratulations,
because,
you didn't.
yes, I
Right.
did. That's right.
Good for you.
I, avoided-
Good for you.
I turned it around. That's the trick. Finding little things
That's
like that to not only turn it around, but then celebrate afterwards. So, Yahoo! I did it.
that's great. Very good. Very good. Yay.
There we go. That's right. VGVGY, isn't that it?
BGBGY. That's what we say.
So that's the first one that comes to my mind. I mean, can you think of anything that you experienced this week that gave you a little bit of a victory?
You mean other than getting my heat back on?
No, that's a good one.
I was
That that
I
is
said,
a
I
good
want
one.
to solve this mystery. The electricity went off, our heat went off. My husband reset it a few times, didn't go back. It would go on, but then it would go off. And I said, I want to fix this. I do not want to have to call the landlord. I had actually texted the landlord, and before I hit send, like, no, I want to do this myself. I want to figure this out. I don't want to have to rely on him. I want to solve this and get it going ourselves. We can do this. So I got the owner's manual out and I read through it and I reset it and looked at the error code and I was like, okay, this is the problem. And then I looked at all the screws that had to be taken off and I was like, nah, this is when I call my husband and say, Mike, can you do this? So he's like, sure. So then he took it from there and then, it's just a filter that needed to be cleaned out. So I cleaned out the
Oh,
filter,
yeah.
give it back. He put it all back together and yay, it's working. So
Hooray.
so I was happy that that all worked out just perfectly.
And you did it without having a nutty. You did it. You stopped yourself in the middle of a bad reaction. Said, "Wait a minute. No, I'm not going to react this way. I'm going to stay in a positive frame of mind. Bring in an expert. Get this thing dealt with." And it worked.
Yeah, and I actually never got to the point where I was upset or angry or anything.
Better.
I was just like, okay, well, look at it going again and but
That was
I
just-
but I really didn't want to call the landlord. I really wanted to take care of it
Mhm.
ourselves. So that was my little victory for that for
But you
that. So
stayed
that was
calm and in alignment throughout what was a difficult situation. That's good
Yeah,
because
I've been in alignment most of the day. I find I don't go too far off unless I'm really frustrated. Sometimes my kids throw me out of balance. I think my kids throw me out of balance more than anything when they because there's so much emotion around your children. Uh, and part of it for me goes back to, well, maybe I didn't, it was probably something in my parenting that was lacking that is causing this imbalance in my child now. So yeah, so those are the hard times for me to get out of. But if I'm
Mhm.
just living my life and my kids aren't around, and then I'm usually okay.
Well, it sounds like you're actually getting better then, because I mean, if that's the only time that you're getting knocked out of alignment, you have plenty of opportunities with the Budwood, for instance, to get out of alignment.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not those aren't the only times I get knocked out of alignment. I do get knocked out of alignment from at other times, but I'm much better than I used to be. I have to say I've really gotten better, and I spend a lot of time just listening to Abraham videos and on YouTube, just listening to that. Although honestly, I listen to your podcast now a lot more than I listen to Abraham now. Before I used
Oh,
to be
wow.
all Abraham. Now I listen to your podcast. I find they're much more conversational, so they're
Hmm.
they're easier to listen to, and I still learn from them, but it's just more. I don't know. It's just somehow more enjoyable in a way. So thank you
Well,
for
on
doing
behalf
them.
of of you and my other co-hosts, thank you for the compliment. That's really, I mean, to be put even in the same sentence as Abraham, that's a pretty big compliment. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I'm glad to know that. I mean, I have been deliberately wanting and implementing as much as I could, having conversational programs about the law of attraction. So to know
Hmm.
that it's coming off well enough that you actually want to listen to it, and we know that other people, hundreds of people, are wanting to listen to them.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that feels good. I was like, yay, all right.
Yeah,
I'm getting
yeah.
it right here. This is a good thing.
Yep. See, there's a win for you right there.
There's a win. I didn't even think about that one.
Yep. 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 So who's tuning in? Is there anybody tuning in? You want to read some
Yeah.
names off or any questions?
Just people saying hello. Fabian, Sarita, Bronwyn, Lynn. People are just coming in saying hello. Sarita told a little bit about her story with her daughters. Um, and in fact, Sarita was saying about her daughter, she's getting divorced and her husband left her in a huge mess, but she has come through the other side with strength and fearlessness, which is very powerful.
Nice. Good.
So, or even when they're sharing stuff like that, they're sharing it in the positive. This is really good stuff.
That's right.
The only thing we're lacking is, people asking questions. So if you have a question, feel free to put your question in, and we'll be happy to address it, even if it's just something you've wondered about theoretically or whatever. But feel free to ask the questions if you're listening to the live stream. If you're listening to the recorded podcast, that's a little bit difficult, but that doesn't mean you can't send us an email or send us a Facebook or a tweet or something like that, a messenger message, because we'll just take it up on the next podcast. But lacking any live questions, I guess we can just go back and forth and raise our own questions. So you raised a good one about what victories that we had. I'm going to raise a question that dates back to when David Bartkey was here on a regular basis. He
Hmm.
used to ask me every single Sunday, what what vibration rising, no, wrong phrase, what vibration raising foods have you had in the past week? And for him, a vibration raising food was something that was really tasty or really good and just made you feel so good. That was a vibration raising food. I think it's because he loved
Oh,
food so much.
okay. Right, right, right. I love food too. I absolutely love food. I mean, and I can now I'm gluten free. I don't eat wheat, so I don't eat most gluten, right? But I can go into a bakery and or some other places that have a lot of glutinous food in them, and I can look at them and enjoy them vicariously and just imagine what they taste like. And I just spend, maybe 15, 20 seconds on each one. I'll just sit there and each one I'll just go through the whole case and I'll just look and enjoy, and that's enough for me. And then I can leave and I'm satisfied. No calories at all. Didn't didn't cost me a penny, but I love it. So so
That's pretty amazing. I mean, most people would treat that as like, oh God, I'm being so tempted. You're treating it like, oh, this is a treat to actually enjoy it like this.
yes. However, when you get to actually physically experience the food, I'll say that is better.
It is
So
better.
last night we went to a restaurant. This happened to be restaurant week in Middletown, so we went out to a restaurant with some friends. We actually canceled our show at the Buttonwood Tree. For those of you who might be tuning in for the first time or don't know, that I run a nonprofit called the Buttonwood Tree. It's a performing arts center in Middletown, and we had to cancel our show last night because of the snow.
Mm.
And the volunteers that were going to help us last night, our good friends Rick and Lai, um, they called and they said, "Hey, so are we? The show is off." And I was like, "Yeah, the show is off." And I said, "Let's go out to dinner." So we went out to dinner, and I had creme brulee, and I just adored it. And it was just a vanilla bean creme brulee. It wasn't any fancy flavors like jasmine or anything like that, but the texture of it was so creamy and
Mm.
the taste was just so delicately vanilla, and the crunch on the top was just the right. You don't burn, but you cook the sugar on the top of a creme brulee to make it that crunchy, and it was just right. It was just, oh, it was just mouth watering. It was just so delicious. So and anytime I can get creme brulee, man, I'm happy. I'm super happy. I mean, it just raises me right up beyond where I was before. Yes. So I really, really enjoyed that. Really
I
enjoyed
can
that.
tell just from the way you described it, just from the look on your face as you're describing it, I can tell how much you enjoyed it.
Yep. Yep.
Actually, we had an experience like that tonight. Louise made a beef stew, and I don't know what she did differently. I know she did use one ingredient that was a little bit different, and it was a little bit saltier than normal. But I gotta tell you, she got the richness of it down pat this time. I mean, you know how it is. You're playing with
Nice.
cornstarch, you're playing with things, trying to get just the
Yep.
right consistency and the right amount of
Yep.
flavor and so forth. She nailed
Yep.
it this time, and oh, I mean, every single. You can actually eat something and just kind of shovel it in. This
Yeah,
was where you would take one bite and you'd savor the bite. That's how
yeah,
good it was.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
really, really good.
yeah, yep, yep. That reminds me of another, I'm going to call it another win. As you know, I threw a birthday party for my husband recently, and it was a potluck. And so I decided, people seem to like my chili, so I decided to make a pot of chili, and I wanted to make it so that people would really enjoy it.
Mm.
And I did. I got it so good. I was like, tasting it as I'm going along, as I cook. I taste. I add a little bit of this, add a little bit of that. I taste it again. And oh, this is so good. And at the end, there was there were maybe like 4 servings left, maybe 5 or 6 servings left. And I looked and I was like, oh, good. There's enough left over. I can take it home and have it for dinner tomorrow. And then a couple of guys came up and they said, oh, that chili was so good. Can I take some of it home? So I wound up with no leftover chili. They
Oh.
wanted it all.
I had some of that chili. That chili was delicious. It was really, really good.
Good.
It was very good. Yep.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you got some.
It was good. I enjoyed it. It was very, very good.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad I can bring joy to people through my cooking. That's one of my joys in life is to be able to cook something and have other people enjoy it.
That's just it. That's why David used to call it high, vibration raising food. Because when a food tastes good, it really does make you feel better, which is taking you to a higher vibration. And
Hmm.
that's a good thing to recognize. Food is one of the things we do every single day. And if we ever get good food, and usually most of us have at least tolerably good food, if we celebrate it, that's when we're getting the most out of our day-to-day lives. So many people, including myself, will have like a daily process, and we'll do it in the morning or in the evening before bed or something like that.
Hmm.
But when we have, I'll call it a process for lack of a better word, when we have processes like appreciating the flavor of food, if we're lucky enough we have 3 good meals a day or something like that, well, that's 3 different opportunities during the day to appreciate how good we're feeling because of the food that we're eating.
That's
Or
true.
right now, I mean, you went through having your heat breakdown, which is dangerous right now because tonight and tomorrow are going to be bitterly cold. I mean, it would have been physically threatening life and limb if you hadn't gotten that heat back. But you did get the
Yeah,
heat back.
absolutely.
That is worthy of tremendous celebration, and it feels really great. Not just as physically warmer, but it feels good inside. Like, oh yes, we're safe, we're secure. We're taken care of because we have the heat to get through a bitterly cold winter night. Got to celebrate those things because they do help
I'm
raise our
happy.
vibration. Yeah, and
Yeah,
you could tell from the way you were telling the story, it was very evident that it was making you
yeah,
very happy.
yeah. So is that why? So do you think that is that why onions are not a high vibrational food? But I
Depends
like the
on.
taste of onions, but yet I heard that onions were not a high vibrational food.
I've not heard that, so I'm going to disagree with it and say I think it is a high vibrational food if you like it.
Hmm.
I think that's what the determinant is. Do you like the food?
Interesting. Okay, maybe so you can change so you're saying the vibrational state of a food changes according to whether you like it or not.
To how you're feeling about
Interesting.
it, precisely. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what
that's
vibration
interesting.
is. Vibration is measured by how do we feel about it. That's our best measurement tool.
Hmm.
I mean, that's some people are lucky enough that they also have other sensitivities to messages from non-physical and so forth. But for somebody like me who's not usually had that kind of experience, actually, I almost never had that kind of experience. I was feeling left out for the longest time until someone pointed out to me that, well, you do have that connection. The connection is how you feel about stuff. That's your clue. If you're
Hmm.
feeling good, then you're in high vibration. If you feel not so good, then you're in lower vibration. It's like,
Huh.
oh, great, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's my clue right there. Okay, well, since I know that, then I can evaluate at any given time what my vibration level is just by how do I feel about it. If I
Yeah.
feel good, it's high vibration. So yeah, I don't care what the food is. I mean,
Hmm.
the food could be something really disgusting, but if it makes you feel good, then it's high vibration. And if it makes me feel bad, then it's low vibration for me. It's just that simple.
Well, I think you bring up a good point about vibrational levels and our awareness. And I think that that's something that's really important for people to pay attention to is what vibrational state are you at? And if you want the law of attraction to work in your favor, to work deliberately with you, then you need to pay attention to your vibrational state and stay as happy and as positive and as joyful as you can, no matter what's happening around you. Maybe peacefulness is the best you can get to if things are really chaotic around you. Just maybe calmness is the best you can get to. But if you can just get to peace and contentment, and everything else is falling around you, is it chaotic, or it's violent, or it's angry, or whatever, then peace is better. But and anytime you can go above that and feel happy or joyful or blissful, as we compare to appreciativeness, then that's great. And being aware of that is really important, really important. It's like super, super important. And not only being aware of it, but then if you recognize that you're not feeling really good in any way, or you're not feeling content or happy, then taking steps to change it and recognizing,
Right.
okay, I need to change it. It's more important that I change my state of being than that I fix this problem
Yes.
or anything. There's a quote on my in my bathroom, and it says, I don't have to fix the problems. I have to fix my thinking. Just fix your thinking, and the problems will fix themselves.
Boy, is that a good quote, and it's accurate too, because that is it 100% of the time.
Yep.
Um, One of the topics that Louise and I have addressed quite a bit lately, for obvious reasons, because she's gone through some health issues, is health, and not just her health. I mean, a lot of people in our lives who are dealing with health issues and who are, perhaps struggling with health or have had health returned or whatever. But in every case, the more that I pay attention to the information that I get, the clues, the storylines that I get, the more aware I become of the fact we are healthy or not healthy completely based on what our thought patterns are. Because you can always see it. Someone who is dealing with a health issue inevitably had a prior history of negative thought pattern that directly impacted that dis-ease situation. And anybody who recovered from an unhealthy situation into a healthy situation, inevitably, one way or another, whether it was just through believing that the medication they were taking was working, or listening to the doctor, or just taking it upon themselves, whatever, they got themselves into a frame of mind that said, I'm getting better. I
Mhm.
could see it with Louise when Louise was in,
Mhm.
in the worst part of what she's been going through, and she's still in the improvement mode, but she's making progress. In the earlier stages, whenever she had a day where she said, I'm having a good day, inevitably later on in the day or first thing the next morning, she had a good day. The moment that she switched her pattern over to things aren't going well, I'm too tired or whatever, inevitably she'd fall into a lower end day, a day that wasn't as successful, like almost like taking a
Right.
step backward. And it
Right.
was 100%. I mean, we're not talking like a high level of correlation. We're talking 100% correlation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I've been noticing. It
Yeah.
really is true. We've had it
Yeah.
with
It's amazing.
people who are listening. Dee Dee was in the hospital, and that's a story that we mentioned a few times.
Mhm.
And she got herself into a positive feeling place, and we did a thing as a group with Cindy Chavez leading us, talking
Mhm.
about imagining her to be happy and healthy, and what a part of
Right.
our audience, and asking her questions and sharing her wisdoms and all that kind of thing. And she ended up missing emergency surgery that her doctors had been telling her she was going to have to have.
Right.
I mean, there's a
Right.
there's a wonderful example of it right there.
Yes. Yes. No, it's true. It's true. That's great.
I mean, I was listening to there was an old, not terribly old, number of years ago. There was a television program here in the U.S. called Iconoclasts, and this one particular episode featured Mike Myers, the comic, and Deepak Chopra. And the two
Wow.
of them had this conversation. And apparently they've been friends for about 10 years, so they know each other pretty well.
Wow.
Um, but they were essentially talking about the interrelationship between spirituality, as Deepak teaches it, and humor. And they were making the case that humor actually is a way of developing your spiritual connection, which makes a lot of sense. Well, in the course of the conversation, I don't remember exactly where it was. Chopra says something along the lines of whenever people are dealing with a negative situation, or if it's being presented to them through a speaker or something like that, and if it's a really negative situation, but it's presented in just the right way, the natural reaction is for somebody to laugh at it,
Hmm.
which is very true. If depending on how it's presented to us, if it's presented in just the right way, even though we're talking about something like death and destruction, if it's presented the right way, we turn it into laugh because that's our normal way of responding to it. And I thought that was really insightful.
Wow.
Well, it's true,
Can
I
you,
think.
can you give me an example?
I'm trying to remember what specific examples they had in the program, and of course none of it's coming to mind right now. I do remember that Mike Myers quoted Lenny Bruce, the comic from the 1960s, as saying that humor was pain over time.
Pain over time.
Pain over time. And the example he gave is, I won't use his exact example because it was rather gory, but you could have something really awful happen to somebody. If it's presented the right way, it's funny. But if you stub your toe, it's tragedy. And that's often the way. If you look at actual movies, look at television programs, look at the dramas that you've seen. The stuff that they'll present as dramas. Well, these days it's gotten pretty dark. But very often, a lot of the stuff that gets presented as drama really isn't life and death stuff. It's really relatively minor, but they treat it like, the music's playing in the background. Oh, this terrible thing is happening, and it's like, somebody just stubbed their toe. That is often the way stuff gets presented. Whereas big dramas, I mean, I don't really find a lot of it funny, but a lot of the comedies that are out these days are about, horrific events that are played out in a comic way. Some of the most popular comedy movies are played out that way.
Mhm.
Again, I'm not really a fan of most of them, but I have to say that is true. That is what often happens. It's about looking at the worst things that life throws at you and turning it into absurd. I think that's what they were really driving at. When you turn it into absurdity, it's like Chopra mentioned the Shakespeare quote. I can't remember which play it was. It was something along the lines of, oh, what's the famous quote? Um,
To be or not to be?
no, no, no.
I don't
I can't remember it. It's like the fool. Oh, I can't remember the quote. It's a very famous Shakespeare quote. But the gist of it is that life is um, is a joke. It's a bad joke. That's the gist of the quote. That it's pointless. That it's foolhardy, and it's making a big deal out of nothing. That's what most of life is, according to Shakespeare. And that is a prevalent viewpoint. I think it's still prevalent today in many, many ways. But here we have us and people like us coming on with this kind of a program saying, you know what, life's actually pretty good. Instead of treating life as if it were a bunch of stupid things existing for no real purpose, um, a lot of madness signifying nothing, that kind of thing. Instead of looking at it that way, why not look at it as life is a series of events where we get to decide how we're going to react. And if we choose to react well, we're going to get more reasons to have life produce well for us.
know. Hmm.
Well, that actually becomes a purposeful life when you
Yeah,
live that way,
absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely. And one probably in which you will evolve much more so than if you just look at it through different lenses.
hmm Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, we have a world full of opportunities. We talked about the contrast before and how heavy the contrast is. I told a little story about how I thought, I had this non-physical conversation going on where it seemed like I was saying, we don't need all this contrast. Turn the contrast down. You're going too far. You don't need to go that far. Well, we're doing that. We're turning the contrast down, but we're doing it just by making different choices.
Right, right.
And we're
And we're
doing it in the
trying
face of
to,
a background where everybody's making these wildly crazy choices. Like, oh God, these terrible things are happening. Let's dramatize it even more. And we're saying, no, thank you. We're just not going to go there.
right. I've got enough trauma in my life. I don't need that.
Who needs the drama? Too much
No,
drama, too much trauma. Not
that's
necessary.
right. No, I don't need the drama. Something was happening the other day and I was like, "Oh, that is just too much drama. I don't need it." Don't need it. Yeah,
We've
I
gotten to
forget
the point
this.
where we're watching a movie, and as long as it's a movie that's on a DVD or a recording or something like that, you get to a part where we know the movie well enough, it's starting to get bloody or whatever. Zip right past it. Who needs to watch that part?
Oh
We
yeah,
know
I
it's
don't
there.
watch anything with blood in it. Uh-uh. I'm
Well,
one of those wimps. I don't watch scary movies. I don't watch horror movies. I don't watch if there's gunshots involved. I don't even want to watch it. It doesn't interest me at all. And fortunately, I married someone that is on the same path, and he has no interest in watching those crime investigative scenes where they're always showing you the dead bodies and they're like the scariest show I watch, and it does get my heart racing, is Manifest. Have you seen that show?
no, but interesting title.
It's about it's about a group of people who uh, are on an airplane, and the airplane has some sort of freaky accident thing, and it disappears for 5.5 years. And the people on the plane just experienced a lot of turbulence, and then they landed, and they thought everything was normal. But people on the ground, they thought the plane was lost for 5.5 years. They had no sign of it, no wreckage or anything like that, of course. And so all of a sudden, this plane reappears after 5.5 years, and all of the things that are going wrong from it. And then there's like, and everybody's minds are like connected, and like
Mm.
so they hear each other, and it's just really weird. So it's a lot. There's a lot of suspense. There's a lot of suspense in it. And that gets my heart racing. I said to Mike the other day, I said, I don't know if this is good for my heart or bad for my heart, but like my heart's racing, you know. So that I can handle that, but do not give me blood and fighting. It's like, it's too much drama for me. I don't need it. I mean,
Well, even dysfunctional behavior. If I see something, and Louise will tend to watch this more than I will, but if I see something that is just demonstrating, presenting very dysfunctional behavior, spiteful, abusive of somebody else, all that kind of thing, I lose interest so fast. It's
hmm
ridiculous.
hmm
And that's the kind of high drama that today, gets the ratings. That's the kind of thing that lots and lots of people like to watch, but I don't
yeah.
see the point of it. I mean, I do understand that if you have stuff like that in your own life, then you're going to be riveted to it on the screen because you have that familiarity, you have that connection to it.
Well,
But
there's
even
that, and also
so,
if your life's boring and or it's placid, or your life is just not very exciting to you, and you want more drama in your life, then that's why you tune into these, Judge Judy shows or whatever.
I guess. I don't know. I call me crazy. I think that if you really want that kind of drama in your life, why not just create it? Why do you have why listen to it vicariously if it's really that important to have?
I don't know. I never thought about it like that because I don't want drama in my life. I feel like I've had enough drama in my life. I feel like I have enough drama in my life. I mean, just being at the Buttonwood Tree, there's a lot of things that go on. So I never have thought about, oh, I want more drama in my life. So I don't know. That's a good question.
And yet, the fact is, when we're looking at something like that on a television program, it's as if we were living it in terms of what the law of attraction does, because we're focusing on the drama. So what do? We're attracting more drama into our lives. We're going to attract something of the same vibration in some way into our lives. So it's coming one way or another. Why not be more selective about it? Especially if it's something you're wanting to learn from. Because I get the impression that's one reason people like certain kinds of drama. They figure they can learn something from it. Well, why not make it something that you can track into your life that you can learn from directly instead of hoping that the character on TV is going to learn from it?
Well, I would have to go back to fear on that one, because either everything's based out of love or fear, right? So people don't really want things to happen to themselves, but they like to witness or they like to see or they like to experience in some way some kind of drama. I mean, I think that if, for example, how many people watch crime dramas where people are getting killed all the time, right? But that doesn't mean that they want to have somebody die around them or necessarily go out and kill somebody, but they like to watch it, maybe because they like to watch the uncovering of the mystery or something like that. Like, you know, I think my dad likes a good mystery show. He used to watch Perry Mason. I was going to say Perry Como, but he shows. Yeah, I'm old. Perry Como. Oh, geez, Perry Mason, right? And was it Kojak with Telly Savalas? Because they were always figuring out these mysteries. So I think people like the mysterious aspect of these shows, but I don't know. I don't think they really want to have, like guns or shootouts or
Well, I
dead
don't
people.
either, and that's why I think it doesn't make any sense to look at them. I mean, I understand that people do, but if it were me and I were in their shoes, let's presume that there's person A who wants to have a little more drama in their life. They don't want to have gunfights, but they want to have a little more drama in their life. Well, instead of watching vicariously something on television that has a lot of drama in it, why not dive into something in your own life that has a little drama in it, so you can actually live it? Because that to me is the biggest problem with television and with movies for the most part. You're the observer. And I've really come to appreciate the importance of not just being an observer. I was an observer for most of my life. And I realized that by being the observer, you miss out on a lot of life. You're spending all your time watching somebody else's life. You're not actually doing a whole lot of living when you're in that observer mode.
Well,
So
that's true. That's true. But
So that's why I'm thinking if you really want to increase the drama, but you don't want it to go get out of control, increase it in your actual life so you can experience it. Do some living, and then live from it or gain from it whatever it is you're trying to get out of it. Because anytime anybody picks something like that, they're doing it because it's of value to them for some reason. Well, get the real value. Get it directly for yourself.
well, that may work in some cases. That may work in some cases, and yet I think there's a lot of times when that can't work, and we go watch a movie because we want to be exported from our life and allow our mind to just go on fantasy for 2 hours, or just get totally out of ourselves into something that we don't even want to think about or try to create or anything. For example, like I want to take my granddaughter to go see Mary Poppins. I have no interest in trying to create that scenario in my own life or in any other way. But I'm just going to go to have something to experience vicariously, just like I vicariously enjoy the baked goods at a bakery. I'm going to vicariously enjoy that situation, and I'm going to enjoy being with my granddaughter watching that. So I think people like to vicariously enjoy things a lot more than actually experiencing them in real life. And it's certainly easier in a lot of ways. So I think there's part of it is there's a fear factor there. Part of it maybe is just time and money because it costs time and money to, experience things firsthand. But I think you make a really good point in that I do agree with you that I think it's better to live fully and truly experience something yourself than to watch somebody else do it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I get the impression, and we only have a minute or two left, so I guess I have to be quick about it. I get the impression from various messages I hear from people who are psychically connected to the other side that the other side is riveted, their attention is riveted on the physical world. Abraham has said it themselves. They said this is the cutting edge. This is where all the growth is happening in a big way.
Mhm.
All the
Mhm.
non-physical beings are constantly, just riveted to what's going on here on Earth.
Mhm.
And so I guess my feeling is, well, if you're just going to live vicariously and just watch what's on television, why even be here in the physical? What's the point? Why not just be non-physical and then you can just be riveted from the non-physical perspective? You don't have to actually deal with any of it directly, you know? Well, why not?
We'll have to. I'll have to look for examples of this, one side or
Okay.
the other, because I can see both sides to it. So
I think there's also a part of me that's actually dipping my toe in the contrast right now just because it's more fun to do the show that way.
yes, right. Oh
That's all right.
goodness.
Well,
Well,
we didn't
well,
get
thanks for
any.
having me on.
Yeah, we didn't get any questions from the audience, but at least we had fun with it. That's good, and people seem to be enjoying it, so that's good too. And maybe next time we'll get a little bit more direct involvement, a little bit less vicarious. What do you think?
Right, maybe people will get right in there and go ahead and ask that question.
Dive right in. Absolutely. Well, hopefully that will happen, and when it does happen, then we hope you'll enjoy us joining us next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.